Welcome back. While supporting two products in version EEVX.1, XDM Design and XDM Library, the XDM server has its hardware requirements such as RAM, disk space, and CPU. Combined with the existing product requirements, customers must carefully understand the minimum requirements and then project the capacity system requirements for a successful enterprise deployment. You can deploy the XDM server on Windows or Linux, and those must be 64-bit OS. You should select a server class system to host the XDM server with 4 cores at minimum. Besides the installation disk space and the design data, you should have roughly 2 GB available for the active XDM server to be deployed. Network capacity of 1 GB per second is our recommendation, while slower networks, such as 100 megabytes per second, can still be successful depending on the overall network traffic. Exclusive to the operating system RAM requirements and any other software running on the host machine, you should allocate RAM for the XDM server. As a rule of thumb, we suggest 32 GB of RAM to support 100 concurrent applications accessing the server. Last but not least, our ports. You must enable the XDM server to use several ports, which can be either automatically assigned or explicitly and manually defined, but in any case, those ports must be open and available for the XDM server to use. To achieve optimal performance, it is recommended to choose the XDM server configuration based on the projected concurrent client application load. User on a given client machine connects to the XDM server with an instance of the XDM Design client, XDM Library client, and opens a browser with XDM Collaborator would be considered as 3 client applications. Once you estimated the number of concurrent applications accessing the XDM server, you should update the max num concurrent client apps in the input XML to configure the server. The performance optimization is based extensive XDM server simulation tests that were used to establish the recommended settings for max num concurrent client apps. The values in this table will instruct the deployment utilities to optimize your XDM server to support such concurrent client application load on the server. Try to foresee the growth of those factors for the next year or two. Obviously, systems exceeding the preceding hardware specifications can result in even better performance. The XDM server provides XDM Collaborator services to clients that enables viewing of design and collaboratively review them. To do that, it manages a database cache in order to improve the response time to clients. The size of the database cache is an important factor that influences the performance of the XDM server and requires configuration of the XDM server during the server deployment process. The configuration for you to influence the XDM Collaborator memory and therefore the performance of the XDM server is by setting the largest design size in the XDM server input XML file. There are 2 types of largest design size, PCB and net. You should provide type as PCB if setting based on design file size of layout dB in megabyte, or net if based on the number of electrical nets. Note that if you are using both schematics and PCB design tools, you should provide PCB settings. The net settings should be used only when there is no possibility of providing PCB reasonable layout dB size. In addition to the base level RAM requirements, other factors contribute to the amount of RAM necessary to support an optimal running XDM server. If the XDM library services are deployed onto the XDM server, there will be a minimum of 50 megabytes per each concurrent XDM library session connected to the XDM server. Since customers can extend the library data model, for example new classes, catalog groups, properties, for example up to 250 megabyte, you have to take that into account. Here is an example. Out of 50 concurrent client applications, which require 16 gigabyte according to the table we just saw, on average 20 are concurrent library sessions. In the default use case of 50 megabyte per session, we will end up with 17 GB required. However, for a customer that has 250 MB of library data model, it will sum up to 21 GB. Prior to deploying the XDM server, which is targeted to use an Oracle server for the database, instead of using the default embedded database, the customer must configure the targeted Oracle server, including a number of settings essential for optimal performance. The following table reflects the results of Mentor Graphics' internal testing based on the number of concurrent client applications access the XDM server. These settings should be adjusted within your environment if further optimization is needed based on observations. In this video, we describe the environmental requirements for the XDM server. Those included the supported OS, the hardware, and the ports. We discussed the factors that influence the RAM capacity, such as the number of client applications accessing the server, the largest design size, and the number of XDM library sessions. Finally, we review the Oracle database settings. Please remember that much more detailed information is found on the user's guide.